I'm Kelsey.
And I'm Emily.
And this is
A Trial by Podcast.
Hi listeners, Trent here with your trigger warning of the week. Every episode of A Trial by Podcast explores violent themes, but this week's episode in particular discusses abduction, sexual assault, and rape. If these are particularly upsetting topics for you, you may want to skip this episode and join us next week. We'll love you all the same.
Okay, we are, I don't know about you, but I am low energy today.
Definitely not up and at 'em.
Yeah, not up and at 'em today. And you know what? I think it suits the story. We've got a few sad stories today. We're doing a little bit of a different take today. So I'm going to tell you a couple different short stories that they will all tie in together, and you'll see. So anyway, I think we're just going to get right into it. So this first story I heard actually for the first time on a different podcast called the Mr. Ballin Podcast. And I heard it right when I was writing the other stories that I'm going to tell you after this first one. And I was like, oh my God, I have to tell this story. Now, Mr. Ballin, the way that he does his podcast is it's very storytelling, it's all factual, but he tells it more like a novel than a memoir, if that makes sense.
Yeah, he has a really cool voice too, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's very serious. He's very serious. But yeah, I like his podcast. He picks really his stories, they always have a twist or something unexpected. And, he tells them in a very specific way. So
that's how I felt about the John McAfee case, dude.
Yeah, well, that one I was like, I didn't even have to. I just did that in chronological order because it's it was just built into the story.
One twist after another.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm going to start with this story. So this story takes place in the 1970s in Utah. And there's this couple, and they met at college, and, the guy kind of had a crush on the girl. The girl thought he was kind of cute, so they decide to go on a first date. And they go out to dinner, and really the date's, not going well at all. It's not bad. It's just the whole thing is awkward.
The vibes are off.
The vibes are off for sure. The guy really likes her, but he's just awkward. He doesn't really know how to talk to women. She's kind of feeling the same way. And since he likes her, he's like, okay, well, let me just kind of I don't know, reach out with an olive branch. And he's like, I'm just going to take a chance. And he's like, hey, after we're done here, do you want to go on this hike in the woods where he knows this really great stargazing spot? And it kind of sounded like it was kind of a known spot. Other people went there. It's a normal trail, and everyone kind of knows of it. It might be one of those places where people go and park and they're teenagers making out in their cars and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And
I feel if somebody asked that now, I'd be like, that's a red flag. I'm not going anywhere on a hike with you. I just met you.
Dude, no, that's literally when I heard this story, you'll see why the theme just goes along exactly with what I'm talking about today, which is why I'm really just retelling the story. You should listen to it on the Mr. Ballin podcast. He tells it in such a fantastic way. But when I heard it too, I was like, okay, this is 101. Do not do this. I will, spoiler alert, this guy doesn't do anything wrong to this woman.
Oh, okay.
But just self-protection 101, don't go into the woods at night with someone you just met. Bad,
especially after the first date, and it didn't go great.
Yeah,
probably not. But
so anyway, so she agrees anyway because she didn't know any better. She didn't listen to true crime, so she didn't have the information. But now you do, right? So you would never do that. And so they head out to Provo Canyon, where this stargazing spot is. And once they get there, the date's kind of going better because now they have something to talk about. And, they're driving, they're doing an activity. So it's not all just relying on conversation skills. And so they get there, they park, and they start walking, and they're getting a little flirty, and they're kind of holding hands here and there, and it's like spooky, you know? They're in the woods at night. They're getting all spooked. And as they're walking, they both kind of start to feel this like weird energy in the woods, and they start to get anxious and like nervous and scared and just like spooked. But neither one of them like wants to tell the other one how they're feeling. Like they're keeping it to themselves because the guy's like, "Oh, I brought her here, and now I'm like," he's like, I've gone here like a bunch of different times, and I've never been so spooked." And she's just thinking, "Oh, well, he comes here all the time. Like this is just me. I'm just spooked because I'm in the woods at night, which is spooky." But they still, like, they're feeling like this is very weird. They don't know why they're feeling this way. So they both just start walking super, super fast. And they're just trying to get this hike over with so they can kind of get out of, like, the woods, like, get into the clearing where the stargazing spot is and just get away from this creepy energy. Because, like, if you've ever been in the woods at night, like, you just feel like there's so much stuff around you that you wouldn't hear or, like, see things, like, creeping up on you.
I feel like that's the exact reason why I have not been in the woods at night.
Oh my God.
And I don't want to ever be in the woods at night.
Me and my cousin, Katie, shout out Katie, we one time like hiked. We did this hike. It was like downward. So we started up high and you hike down to this lake and it's supposed to be a great sunset spot. Well, what you don't think about is like once the sun goes down, you're hiking back up in the woods. And I think this was in South Lake Tahoe, and there's bears there. So we're like hiking back up, and we just were shitting our pants the whole time. Like we're hiking back up. We were playing music from my phone because like if you're in bear country, you're supposed to be like making noise because if the bears hear you coming, like they don't want to see you either. So they'll stay away from you. We have never walked so fast in our fucking lives. We were just
fastest hike
booking
back.
it. But it was like, I think we kind of expected like when we found it online, it seemed super popular, so I think we kind of expected there to be like a ton of people there. No, by the time we were hiking back up, we were the only ones. Like we did not see any people. It was so spooky. Like I just remember being like, never doing that again. Never.
Can we do a whole episode on like spooky situations you and Katie have been in? Because there could be a whole episode on that.
Yeah, for real. For real. I do. I keep saying I want to do like... It's a miracle
nothing has happened to you guys.
I always say like me and my cousin Katie, we're good travel buddies because she's too brave and I'm too anxious. So like she brings me out of my shell a little bit and I keep her alive. But
it has showed.
Yes. She doesn't
you
believe
guys are
me.
both unharmed.
I tell her that and she literally doesn't believe me. She's like, "No, like I'm fine, whatever. Like I'm smart about it." I'm like,
because you're the mom and nothing happens to her, so she's like, "Well, nothing's happened, so like,
right?
Nothing has happened."
That's her mindset. She's like, I've always been fine."
Yeah,
and I'm like,
she's like, "What are you talking about?"
I don't know, but anyway, so. I know exactly this creepy energy in the woods that they're talking about. I hope that what happened to these people did not happen to me, but I might not know yet.
Uh-oh.
So, again, they just start walking really fast. They're trying to get out of these woods. Like they want to get to the stargazing spot. They're just stressed, but they're keeping it to themselves. They're not talking about this.
They're like, "We're not little bitches. Let's just get through the woods and we'll be fine."
Yeah. And at this point, they're not even like really talking to each other. That's like how much of like a focused rush.
So they knew. They
in.
both knew. They're like, "All right, we're on the same level. Let's get out."
Then all of a sudden, like as they're walking, they hear like a rustling noise somewhere in the woods, which spooks them. And almost as soon as they hear it, the man who's leading them, the woman's walking behind him, he's in front. And then the man steps on something that he later says, he just says it felt soft. Like it felt softer than the ground should have been. And it didn't feel right. So as soon as he steps on it, he pauses. Like he doesn't even take his foot off of it. He just pauses. And the woman, without even asking, she just pauses too. She just freezes because they've heard the rustling. This is all like unspoken. They both know something is weird. He steps on something, he freezes, and they both freeze together. He pauses for just a moment, and without even looking down to see what he stepped on, he turns around. He doesn't look down. He doesn't look around to like see where the rustling noise was coming from. he just freezes. The two turn around. They don't even, the girl's not even like, what's wrong? Why are we turning around? They just silently head back to the car as fast as humanly possible.
No words needed said in that moment.
Yeah, like they don't even need to confirm they both just like, we know what's up. We know that this is not right. It's instinctual. So they get back to the car, and once they're in like safely inside the confines of the car, they both start just like, oh my God, that was crazy. What was that?
How did you feel? Because I felt like shit.
Yes, like just kind of going back and forth. Like, that was so weird, right? Like, was that an animal? What was that rustling noise? And then the guy's saying, I stepped on something. It felt soft and blah, 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 blah. And they just are kind of having like, oh, this weird, crazy experience that they can't describe.
I love that he doesn't even look at it, because that would be me. I'd be like, I don't even want to know what I stepped on. I'd just go get the fuck out.
Well, the fact that he doesn't even look at it saved their lives.
Oh, thank God.
Because, okay, so first of all, I want to note, remember how at the beginning, they go on this date, it's going horribly, it's so awkward and weird. And now by the end, they're like, oh my God, they're blabbing back and forth, like they can't stop talking about it. Well, it really turned around, because this couple later got married, and they ended up living happily ever after.
Go through that experience together and see how you come out, and then you'll know.
Well, the real test was really 10 years later, when they were sitting at home on the couch watching TV together. And they're like flipping channels, and all of a sudden they see an interview come on. And this interviewer asks a very well-known criminal, quote, "Was there ever a time you almost got caught?" End quote. And the criminal answers, quote, "Yeah, this one time I was burying a body in Provo Canyon, and this couple came up, and I thought I was going to have to kill them."
What the fuck?
Now this criminal was Ted Bundy.
What the fuck?
They had come across Ted Bundy burying a body, and the guy stepped on the body.
Oh my God.
But Bundy had heard them coming and like covered up the body a bit. And the guy stepped on the body. Now, if he would have looked down, he would have seen that it was body. If he would have looked around, Bundy was the rustling noise in the woods. Bundy was standing there watching them.
I choose the bear. Give me the bear.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
Oh God.
And so he said, if he would have looked down at the body, or if he would have seen me, I would have had to kill them. He's like, it was so weird, Bundy describes it, and he's saying it was so weird, he didn't even look down, he didn't look around, like, I know that they heard me because they paused, they just turned around and went back to the car, and like that was like the closest I came to getting caught.
That just gave me full body chills.
Isn't that a crazy story?
Yeah.
So
I do remember him, like, I think I remember like hearing an interview with him, and him saying that, like, yeah, I almost got caught when I was in the woods, because he hid in the woods for like ever, didn't he?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's when it was, when he hid there, but
I don't know how long he stayed hiding.
Yeah.
I don't remember for sure, but I came across this because today we are talking about women who survived Ted Bundy. And while I was researching this, like, I'm researching different women and everything, I came across this story. And I've been hearing about the Mr. Ballin podcast and how great it is, and I hadn't listened to it yet. And then I heard the story. I was like, oh my God, I have to put this in the episode. Like, this is so good. It's such a good way to like lead up to it. So,
but like, what a cool, amazing that they were not murdered by Ted Bundy. But like, after you find that out, could you imagine, like, I would throw a fucking party. I'd be like, yo, we both escaped Ted Bundy. We almost got killed, unalived. And like, what's your fun fact? Just a nice, good icebreaker. Yeah, I almost got killed by Ted Bundy in the woods one time because I stepped on one of the bodies, apparently.
Well, just imagine not knowing for 10 years either.
Yeah, and I feel like that's one of those things that you hear it and you're like, that could have been anybody else, but like, you get that feeling, like, you just fucking know.
But also it's like, well, you can kind of go back and fact check that, because he was, which body was he burying, like, which girl was he burying, and when was she killed, and whatever. And you can kind of go back and say, and especially like, this wasn't their, it's not like they were dating for 2 years when this happened. This was their first date. Like, they know when their first date was. Or like, they know the year and the month probably, even if they don't know the exact date. And
yeah, but I'm sure just hearing them tell that story, they're like, they're like, dude, that was us. That was fucking us.
And then it's like, what do you
That
do?
realization.
Like,
Yeah, it's like, how do you go on?
I don't know. It's so crazy.
I wonder if they've been on any other hikes after that.
That's a great question. I actually, so like, it seems like that this couple doesn't like their names to be like, they don't want to be like associated with this. Like,
Very
I don't
fair.
know how the story like got out, but I know that like in the Mr. Ballin thing, he said that, you know, they don't want their names to be used. So yeah,
Very
I have a
fair.
feeling that they're not very like,
Excited about it?
yeah. I mean, who would be? Because I think part of you, not that they, you know, she was already deceased, so there's nothing they could have done to save her. But it's also like, I think a part of you would just feel a little bit guilty that, I don't know, like, could you have done something? Or, you know, 'cause
I
he
did
did
like,
say-
you'd go through a lot
but
of
you
mixed
couldn't, they couldn't
emotions.
have, they really couldn't have.
Well, yeah,
so.
if they did, then I feel like Ted Bundy is one of those people that's like a monster, and he was like extremely strong. So it was like I don't think they could have stood
Yeah.
a chance.
Yeah. So getting into it, our first story today, and this is kind of the biggest one that I wanted to tell, just because I came across it by chance, and I thought it was a really hard but important story, and then I have one more short story after, and I want to be clear that these are not all the survivors of Ted Bundy. There are more, and maybe, you know, if people like this episode and they think it's interesting, we can do more. I know a lot of people will probably be wanting us to cover serial killers. I don't know that I'm going to, or if I do, it might be victim by victim, just because a lot of the times, like, when podcasts are in our type of format where like every episode is different or every couple of episodes are different cases, I feel like a lot of the times, like, if someone has 30 plus victims like Ted Bundy, you're just rushing through and it's just like a list of names. And I feel like there's so much more to the story. So I don't know that we would ever like just go, here's 3 parts on Ted Bundy. I don't know if you can like do it justice that way, but maybe a little bits and pieces. So anyway, today I'm going to tell you the story of Rhonda Stapley, who was a pharmacy student at the University of Utah. And this takes place in 1974. So at the time, Rhonda was in her 4th year of a 6-year pharmacy program. And she was actually Bundy's 2nd victim in Utah. But at the time, of course, she had never heard of Bundy because Bundy did all the Washington murders. Then he fled to Utah, but they didn't have a name to connect to this serial killer. So no one really even knew at the time that there was a serial killer in Utah, and no one knew the name Ted Bundy. But Rhonda, you know, was kind of just, again, this is the 70s. She's a college student, kind of just living her life. And there was one day when she had to go to her dentist's office. She had to get kind of like a minor oral surgery done. And so she goes to the dentist's office in the morning, gets the surgery, and then afterwards, like, since she was already downtown, she had to take a bus from campus to downtown to get there. She's like, okay, well, like, now I have nothing else to do the rest of the day. I'm already down here. Let me just kind of like walk around, shop a little bit, you know, kind of enjoy the day as much as you can with like a fully numb mouth. So while she's shopping downtown, she ends up buying a new pair of hiking boots. And she decides, you know what, since I'm down here, why don't I head over to the park and like break these bad boys in? Because if you know, hiking boots can be very uncomfortable and like stiff when you first buy them.
She had to see how fast she could run in them.
Yeah, like zoom in.
Yeah.
Now she heads over to this park called Liberty Park, and she puts on the new hiking boots, and the laces like seemed super, super long, like for these boots. So she ties them up real tight, and then she wraps the laces kind of around the ankle part of the boot a couple times before like double knotting them close. So these boots are on
Extra
her
fucking
feet.
secure.
They are secure. And
Strapped.
they are strapped. And this becomes important later in the story.
Those boots aren't going nowhere.
Those boots are made for walking. And that is what
Those
they'll
boots
do.
were made for hiking and not coming off your feet.
Those boots were made for living. And
Oh.
that is what she'll do. Now, so she's walking around the park for a bit. She's just kind of like people watching on her own. And I always think about this. I'm like, man, no phone.
Love people watching.
No phone, just people watching in the park, like walking around by yourself, just enjoying your day. And eventually she kind of decides, she's like, all right, it's time to go home. Like the numbing from her surgery was starting to wear off. So like she was starting to have some pain and she's like, I need to go home, like get some pain medicine. So she walks down to the bus stop and she waits, but the bus doesn't come. And she's frustrated. She's like, I really want to get home and get some medicine. She's starting to get like a little irritated with the pain. And she's waiting. Again, the bus is not coming. And all of a sudden, she sees a tan Volkswagen buggy drive by. And the buggy drives by, and then it turns around and comes back. And the man pulls up to her and asks Rhonda where she's going. And she told him, I'm going home. I'm going back to campus. And he said he was going the same way. He was also a student at the University of Utah, and he could give her a ride if she wanted. Now, children, don't hitchhike.
Don't take rides from strangers.
Don't take rides from strangers. Don't hitchhike. Okay, so Rhonda accepted his offer for a ride back. And she kind of describes this because I watched an interview with her. She kind of says that, like, at the time, the whole idea that hitchhiking was dangerous was kind of a new concept. Like, that kind of started in the 70s, like in the 60s and the 50s and stuff. Like, it just wasn't seen as something dangerous at all. It was just like a normal thing for young people to do.
Yeah.
So she had heard a little bit that hitchhiking was dangerous. But again, it's like you're a college student. You're like, whatever, who cares?
Like, I'm an adult. I can hitchhike if I wanted to.
Yeah. And on top of that, she also says, like, it didn't really feel like hitchhiking to her. It just kind of felt like a friendly student that went to her school helping out another student. And she said she thought the man looked trustworthy. He was young. He was handsome. He was well-dressed. And he just looked like all the other co-eds that she interacted with on a daily basis. So she gets into the car with Theodore Bundy.
I feel like that's how he got a lot of his victims too, because he was a good-looking guy and he was very charismatic.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if a lot of people know that, because he was like very, I'm sure a lot of people know that from like the movie and everything else, but like he knew how to talk to women, and that's like why he had so many victims, because he was good at getting people to trust him.
Yeah, and it's like when you see someone, especially when you're like a young woman and you see like a handsome guy is like, oh, I'll give you a ride. It's like, great, because, you know, maybe you like him and whatever. And it's like if you see someone who looks scary, like the Trump shooter, you're going to be like, no, I don't want to get in the car with you, you know? And like you look like an incel. Like, I don't want to get in the car. But when you see someone, it's like a handsome guy, like maybe you would date this guy or something. You there's something
You're
that
like, oh, he's cute.
Your brain like feels more trustworthy of this person. So she gets in the car and the two made like very simple, like small talk conversation. And he tells her that he's a law student, which impressed her. And Rhonda told him she was a pharmacy student, which she kind of felt like impressed him a bit too. And so she really felt like, oh, he's young, he's handsome, he's smart, he's going to be a lawyer. And he was in law school. Now,
I mean, I would do the same thing. I'd be like, ooh, you gonna be a lawyer?
Yeah, I would be like, all right, no ring on that finger. Okay, okay. Now, as they got closer to the university campus, Rhonda realized that he took a turn away from where they were supposed to be going. And she asks him, like, hey, where are you going? And he tells her, oh, I have a quick errand to run over by the zoo. I hope you don't mind. The zoo is, like, close to the campus.
Yeah.
So Rhonda says she doesn't mind, and they kept driving. But once they reached the zoo, he just drove right past it. So Rhonda asks him, hey, I thought we were going to the zoo. And Bundy explained, no. Like, the errand is near the zoo, but it's not at the zoo. Why would I have an errand at the zoo? And she's like, okay, yeah, that
like,
makes sense.
He's like, what a weird question. Why would you even ask that?
Yeah, like, he's a law student, not a zoology student. Like, why would he have an errand at the zoo? That makes sense. But he never really describes what this errand is, and he just keeps driving. And once they drove through another canyon past the zoo and they're exiting this canyon, there's a road where Rhonda knows, like, to go towards the university campus, you would have turned right. but Bundy turns left. And this is when she began to feel uncomfortable. Now, she says she just felt uncomfortable. She didn't feel scared. Like, she didn't feel like he was going to do something bad to her. She just kind of thought that he was going to, like, he wanted to, like, pull over and make out or something.
Yeah.
Or, like, wanted to, like, make a move on her. And Rhonda was very religious. She came from a Mormon family, so she wasn't the type of girl that was going to, like, just pull over and make out with some man that she met 20 minutes ago.
Well, that and her mouth was fucking hurting, so she's like, I'm not trying to make out with anybody right now. I need pain meds.
Yeah. So they're kind of driving through these canyons, and, like, the further they get out of this canyon, the quieter Bundy becomes. Like, the small talk is slowing down, and she really feels like she's carrying the conversation, and he just seems very focused on where he's driving. And it's like every time they pass, like, a side road or, like, a pullover or anything like that, Bundy just kind of is like looks like he's kind of like watching it as they drive by, and then decides to continue, is how she describes it. And again, she just thinks, okay, he's trying to make some moves on me. He's just looking for a spot to pull over. And so finally he does pull over into this picnic area where, of course, no one else is. And again, she's not scared. She's just uncomfortable. Like, oh, I don't want to be in this situation. And she's trying to figure out, like, how can I stop this without embarrassing myself? Because she likes him.
Yeah.
But
she
also,
I was the one that took the ride from him, so.
Yeah, and she doesn't want to embarrass him by, like, rejecting him either.
Yeah.
So he pulls over, and as soon as he parks the car, Bundy reaches over and puts his hands around Rhonda's neck as if he was going to strangle her.
Damn.
After a moment, he leaned into Rhonda. She thought he was going to kiss her, but instead he just got nose to nose with her and said, quote, "You know what? I'm going to kill you," end quote. Now, at the time, again, people don't have all the information we do about true crime and serial killers and all of that. So Rhonda was just really confused. He's like, why would he kill her if he didn't even know her? And she thought, well, maybe he was mistaken. Like, he thought she was somebody else, and she's just confused. Or she's like, well, maybe this is like a joke. Maybe this is he's kidding, and this is just some sort of like sick
because
joke.
he did like a whole fucking 180. He's like, hey, do you want to ride? And then he's probably like flirting her up, and then he pulls over and is like, yeah, I think I'm gonna kill you.
Yeah, like, I feel like, because he didn't actually strangle her, he just put his hands around her neck like that. And
weird.
yeah, so she's just thinking it might be some joke. She's just confused. But of course, as we know, it's not a joke. It's not mistaken identity. He's just an evil, evil man.
Never a joke.
And
actually,
as she's wondering this, he does begin to strangle Rhonda, and he strangles her until she became unconscious. Once she was unconscious, he took her body out of the car and laid her on a picnic table. Once she was on the table, he began slapping her, just like smacking her in the face, trying to wake her up. Now, again, Rhonda had had that dental surgery earlier that day, so the slapping tore some of the stitches loose in her mouth, and her mouth began to bleed. She says he seemed to like watching her go in and out of consciousness, and he did this repeatedly. He was strangling her, then waking her up, then strangling her unconscious again, and then waking her up. And at one point, he finally gets her on the ground, and he starts like sitting on her chest with all of his weight, so she literally can't breathe. And like, he's not even strangling her; it's just the weight on her chest. And Rhonda tells him, get off, I can't breathe. And Bundy just responds, quote, "Stop struggling and I'll let you breathe," end quote. Now, finally, at one point, she awoke again, and this time, Bundy was not over her. It was pitch black outside at this point, but thanks to the lights from the car, she could see that Bundy was all the way over by the car, like getting something out of it. He had the door open, he's leaning in, trying to take something out. And she realizes that this is her chance. So she got up and she ran away. Now, she had no idea where she was going or how she would get to safety. She just was, her only thought was run opposite direction. So She begins to run, but after only a few steps, she realized that her pants were around her ankles. She didn't know, so she starts to trip. And because of her large hiking boots that were tied so tightly and just like, wrapped around and had all these knots and all of this, Bundy wasn't able to get her pants off of her. So the pants caused her to trip. And after just a few steps, she's like kind of stumbling, and finally she falls straight into a river with a strong current.
Oh, fuck.
And now she attributes her survival to those hiking boots and this accidental trip into the river. It's also like some people speculate that the reason Bundy was in the car was he was going to get something to cut the laces or to cut the pants off of her or something like that. So she trips and falls into this river, and the river was rough. Like, it was flowing quickly. It was, swirling around boulders and all these other obstacles. It wasn't just like a lazy river type of situation.
Yeah, like
it was like people can drown in there, if you hit a boulder, something like that. So she falls in, but luckily, because the river's flowing so quickly, it got her away from Bundy quickly without leaving like a trail behind her. And of course, the river makes a lot of noise too. So it's kind of covering up, the noise as opposed to just running through brush in the woods where someone can like hear you where you're going.
Yeah. Well, that and it's dark, so you probably can't see where she is in the river.
Right. So eventually she is able to get out of the river. And as you can imagine, it's a little bit hard to swim with your pants around your ankles.
Yeah, and heavy ass hiking boots on.
Yeah. So luckily she gets out of the river and her pants were still around her ankles thanks to those boots. So she's able to redress herself before walking home, because if she didn't have the boots on, likely the pants would have fallen off in the river and she would have been nude from the waist down. So she gets out of the river. She redresses herself. She's soaking wet. It's dark outside. She doesn't really know exactly where she is or how far she is from the campus, but she just starts walking, and she walks and walks and walks. And she's just thinking about how she can't tell anyone what had happened to her. She felt embarrassed for being so stupid to get into a car with a stranger. Those are her words, not mine. I'm not calling her stupid. I understand why she did it.
Yeah.
But again, it's like, this is like a lesson that we can all learn not to do this kind of stuff. But, Rhonda really felt like what happened to her was her fault. And she had also been raped by Bundy. And as a devout Mormon, she was really scared of how her family would react and how people would look at her in her community. Obviously, in Utah, there's a lot of Mormon, a lot of Mormonism. Am I making that word up? Mormonism?
Maybe, but it sounds right.
All right. Well, you guys let me know. All our Mormon listeners, you let us know. So she was thinking about, like, she didn't want to be known at school or in the community or at church as like that girl that got raped. And again, she felt like part of it was her fault. So she just felt ashamed, and she didn't want to have to recount the story to police and like complete strangers and tell them in detail. She didn't want to go to court, nothing. And so she just decided to pretend it never happened. And she just went on with her life without telling anyone.
Damn.
Now, after a while, she began to see news stories about murders taking place in the area and other attacks on women who had also gotten away from this man. And she started to feel extremely guilty, as one could expect.
Yeah.
She felt like she should have come forward, and she had blood on her hands, and that some of the murders were her fault, which I don't think is true.
No. I can see why she feels like that, though. I feel like I would feel the same.
Yeah, 100%. Now, 10 months after her attack, Bundy was arrested for the kidnapping of 18-year-old Carol DeRanch. Carol had also survived Bundy's attack, and I don't believe that she was assaulted by Bundy. I believe she escaped, like she fled from the vehicle. Like he got her in the car and she was able to get out of the car and run away.
Oh, shit.
Now, Rhonda was watching the local news with her friends when she saw this news story come on, and she just felt this like total flood of relief because it seemed that Carol had given the police a good description of Bundy and the car, like everything that they're describing on the news was what like was the same man in the same car that had attacked Rhonda. So she feels relieved, like, okay, now I don't have to come forward.
Yeah, she's like, well, they have enough. They're going to catch him now.
So Bundy was arrested for this kidnapping of Carol. Because of this description, everything matched Bundy. And when Rhonda saw Bundy's picture on the news, she's like, that's the guy who attacked me. She knew it. But then Bundy escapes from prison in Utah. Now, the news had always spoke of Bundy as a kidnapper at the time. After he gets arrested for kidnapping Carol, they're like, this guy's a kidnapper. He had this like kidnapping kit, all of this stuff. But they're not necessarily, at least in the media yet, connecting him to all of the murders. And Rhonda knew, though, that he was more than that. He was a murderer. She knew that the murders that had been happening in the area, she knew that they were Bundy because of what he had done to her and how he had treated her and what he had said to her.
She's like, there's no way this guy's just a kidnapper.
She knew that Bundy was not there just to rape her that night. He was there to kill her. So when she sees he's released from prison, all of the guilt and the fear and everything came rushing back because she knew that if he was smart enough to be able to escape prison, he was smart enough to find her if he wanted to. And she was terrified that he was going to come back and finish the job. But still, Rhonda did not tell anyone what happened for 34 years until one day her boss yelled at her in an angry rage, using a lot of the same verbiage and like mannerisms that Bundy used during her attack. Now, this sent Rhonda into like a full-on PTSD, like spiral trigger situation.
Yeah.
And she eventually found a counselor who was the first person that she ever told what happened to her.
Damn.
34
Could
years
you-
later.
That counselor's probably like, holy fuck, dude. Like, you survived Ted Bundy. Like,
Yeah.
that's crazy.
Yeah. And it's just sad because this is where like I didn't grow up religious to the dismay probably of my grandparents. But I didn't grow up religious. I highly respect religion and people who, you know, are very committed to their religion. But I think you also need to examine your religion for major downfalls like this. Like this poor girl was viciously kidnapped, raped, and the man was trying to murder her, a serial killer. And she was so scared of what her religious community would think of her for being raped against her will that she didn't want to come forward. And it does make you question, and I hate to say it because I'm really not victim blaming, and I think in the grand scheme of things, she didn't do anything wrong by not coming forward.
No.
But
I don't think so either.
But do I think the outcome would have been better if she did? Probably. I mean,
I think
you
for
just
her
don't know.
specifically, I think would have helped a lot. Because she was carrying that around with her and didn't tell anybody for 30
Yeah.
years. So it's like,
yeah, I think that's a horrible thing to have to keep to yourself. And
I feel like that happens a lot though. And I feel like especially with the Mormon community, because I don't know that
seem
much about
very
it, but
extreme.
they're very extreme and they're very about like praising men and like idealizing
Yeah.
men. So it's like,
Yeah,
she
that's
probably
true.
that probably had another.
yeah, and it's like it's just. I just feel like if I was literally picked up off the street and kidnapped and raped and tried to be murdered, like I wouldn't. No part of me. I think I would have been like, oh, I feel so dumb for getting into the car and why did I do that and whatever. But I never, the actual part of being raped, I don't think I would have felt like that was my fault. I would have felt guilty for getting myself into that situation where someone could do that so privately and easily. But I wouldn't have felt like it was my fault because I haven't been taught to think that way. So I
Yeah.
just think like it's in modern day and ages we need to adapt religion to these things. So, you know, if a woman or if anyone is like raped and attacked, that they're not being taught that that was their fault. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anyway, so she finds this counselor and she talks a lot about how she did not start to heal from this experience at all until she told her story to this counselor.
Yeah, that's where I was saying, like, it probably would have helped her out for not having to carry that with her for so long. And
Right. Even if she didn't report it to police, but being able to tell someone.
Anyone, yeah.
Yeah. Now, she believes that Bundy likely has many other survivors out there who, like Rhonda, never came forward to tell their story for the same reasons that she didn't. She urges them not to come forward per se, but to find someone that they can trust to tell their story to so they can begin to heal from their experience too. Mm-hmm. And especially now, obviously, Bundy's passed away. And even when she was saying this, 30, 40 years after it had happened to her, Bundy was already arrested. The whole thing was over. But, I think she was just saying, look, I understand why you haven't told anybody. But if this has happened to you, like, tell someone. You don't have to take them to court. You don't have to go to the police, but tell someone just so you can start to heal.
Yeah, just get it off your conscience.
Okay, so my last story for today, not literally this episode, is the story of the survivors of the Chi Omega sorority house.
Oh, I think I've heard this one.
Yeah. So I'm going to tell you the stories of Kathy Kleiner and Karen Chandler and their neighbor from a few blocks over, Cheryl Thomas. So Kathy and Karen were roommates in the Chi Omega sorority house in Tallahassee.
Tallahassee.
I just combined Tallahassee and Tennessee into one word. Tallahassee. In Tallahassee, Florida. And on January 14th, 1978, a bunch of girls in the house were deciding what they were going to do that night. But Kathy had an upcoming test she needed to study for, and Karen had a sewing project she was working on. So the two girls decided to stay in. Now, their night, while everyone else was out of the house, the night was pretty calm, and the pair eventually, they kind of did their things, and then they went to bed. And again, they're roommates, so they sleep in the same room. Mm-hmm. Now, in the middle of the night, Kathy awoke when the girls' bedroom door flew open. She realized that someone had entered the room, and by the time her eyes adjusted to the light, a man was standing over her. He raised his arm up holding something that Kathy couldn't really identify. She wasn't sure if it was a pipe or a crowbar or what, but before she knew it, he had hit her in the face with it. Now, this hit woke Karen up too. So Bundy walked over to her and hit her with whatever the object was. We still don't really know to this day. He then went back to Kathy and hit her again. And after this third strike, the window of the girl's bedroom lit up because one of the other sorority sisters was pulling into the driveway, just getting home for the night. And the shine of the headlights spooked Bundy because he immediately left the room. Mm-hmm. So he's boom, bing, bang, boom. Headlights come in. He's spooked. He realizes someone's coming home right now. They're about to walk in the door.
Yeah.
So he leaves, unfortunately, to, I think, take care of this person who is like, awake and bright-eyed. Mm-hmm. He's attacking these girls while they're sleeping because they're
vulnerable.
Easy. Yeah, they're vulnerable. Now, after being struck by Bundy, the next thing Karen remembers was being carried downstairs, and she just asked the person carrying her if Kathy was okay. That's all she could think about is Kathy okay? Is Kathy okay? And the person told her she's going to be okay. You just need to worry about yourself. And Kathy was okay. She, too, had been rescued from the home by authorities. So when Karen awoke in the hospital, she couldn't remember what happened or why she was there. She asked again if Kathy was okay, even though they told her already that she was. Mm-hmm. Karen had a skull fracture, and almost every bone in her face had been broken.
Damn.
From just a couple hits, maximum. I think it might have just been one, but maximum a couple. Her arm and 2 of her fingers were also broken because she must have held her arm up in front of her face trying to protect herself. Her family explained that she had been attacked and that the 2 girls who lived in the house with her, 21-year-old Margaret Bowman and 20-year-old Lisa Levy, had died in the attack.
Damn.
They were sexually assaulted, beaten, and strangled to death. As for Kathy, her jaw was also broken. Her jaw, though, was broken in 3 different places. She, too, could not remember anything when she woke up in the hospital. She didn't remember anything about the attack, though she said the memories did slowly come back over time. And of course, as we know, this was like the infamous Chi Omega sorority house that Bundy had attacked after he broke from prison in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
So where was I going with that? I don't know. But Kathy and Karen weren't the only 2 survivors that night, because while the crime scene at the Chi Omega house was being investigated that night, the police got a call that just 6 blocks away, someone had called 911 saying that they heard their neighbor, a young woman named Cheryl Thomas, screaming. Like, it sounded like she was being attacked. She was in distress.
Mm-hmm.
And the police were like dumbfounded. They were like, this, how could 2 separate attacks be happening like 6 blocks away on the same night? This is, stuff like this doesn't happen here. So they go to Cheryl Thomas's house, and Cheryl Thomas is found unconscious in a puddle of blood on the floor. She suffered horrendous head injuries and was taken to the hospital. But Cheryl, unlike the other girls, was fully in a coma. They weren't sure if Cheryl was going to make it.
Damn.
Now, the police were baffled because the MO seemed to be exactly the same from the Chi Omega attack. But they're thinking to themselves, who on earth would have had the audacity to commit another attack while gangs of authorities are just 6 blocks away investigating the attack that you did earlier that night? You know what I mean?
Audacity, yeah.
Like, there's like swarms of cop cars and ambulances and everything outside, and you're gonna walk 6 blocks down and attack somebody else. And I mean, they didn't catch him right then and there, but it's just like they were like, no fucking way could this be the same guy.
Yeah.
But of course it was. It was Ted Bundy. Because at this point, he's on the run. Everyone knows who he is. He's got nothing to lose, really.
He's like, I'm already over here.
Now, luckily, Cheryl woke up in the hospital 9 days after her attack. Her jaw was broken in 2 different spots. Her shoulder was dislocated, and she had 5 fractures to her skull.
Jesus.
Because of the attack, she's deaf in 1 ear now. Now, this gave her major issues with her balance, which was devastating for the young woman who was a dance major in school at the time.
Oh, no.
Now, all of these women had to have their jaws wired shut for weeks on end. Kathy's was wired for almost 20 weeks on 2 different occasions.
Damn, that sucks.
Now, after Bundy's arrest, Karen actually decided to go back to school eventually and even moved back into the Chi Omega house.
Damn.
I should have got like a siren thing, like a siren. No, maybe I'll insert it here. Bad bitch alert. Bad bitch alert. She's like, oh, Bundy, you think you can kill me, bitch? Oh, you think you can scare me out of my house? No fucking way. Bad bitch alert wouldn't be me.
Nope.
Would not be me. I would be living with my mommy and my daddy for the rest of my fucking life. I'll tell you that.
I'd be in the basement.
That is some brave shit.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I cannot imagine. But fucking go, Karen. Go, Karen.
Pop off, Karen.
I think we should reframe the use of the word Karen. Like, they've been using that to like, I think we should redefine Karen as this Karen. Like, Karen's a bad bitch, dude. She don't give a fuck.
Yeah, she really do not give a fuck, but she's respectful about it.
Now, Cheryl, the dancer, eventually regained her balance. She had to train for years doing like physical therapy and like relearning all of her like basic dance skills, but she did continue her education as a dancer.
Good for her. Pop off Cheryl too.
Pop off Cheryl.
She's like, ain't nobody gonna make me unbalanced. I'm going back to school, bitches.
Yep, I love it. I love it. Now, Kathy was married 6 months after her attack, and both she and her parents felt relieved to have someone with Kathy protecting her. Kathy it did sound like she struggled a little bit more after the attacks than the other girls, but really all 3 women went on to live like relatively normal lives. But
Because you know why women are badasses and we can overcome anything.
yes. And I know that those were quick little tidbit stories. I just thought they were so interesting. And I do want to cover some serial killer stuff at some point. I'm just really like deciding I want to do the victims justice in it. And a lot of them, you know, the stories are a little bit shorter and stuff like that. So it's like, how do you combine them into episodes without really like, you want to do it justice and do your due diligence and not like skip through stuff. So I don't know. But I thought that like, especially hearing Rhonda's story and obviously the Chi Omega stories, I feel like we can all learn something from them. So I don't know. I thought they were good stories. I don't know. Let us know if you like this like short story format every once in a while, not all the time. Or if you're like, absolutely not. I don't like short stories. But all the TikTok followers love a short story. They hate when I take too long. So
Because it's TikTok. It's short storypedia.
Yep. All right. Well, that is it for today. Give us a 5-star rating, motherfuckers. I'm not asking anymore. I'm telling.
You better.
You better. Only if you like us, though. If you don't like us, don't give us any rating at all, please. But yeah.
1 stars are not accepted. 5 stars only, please.
Yeah, if you're
Keep
gonna
your
give us a
1 star to
1 star,
yourself.
we're just not the pod for you. That's totally fine. Just don't listen anymore.
Send us an email.
No,
We like
don't.
constructive criticism.
Yeah, but I feel like if they're gonna 1-star us, it's not constructive. If you're gonna 3-star us, I'm open to your constructive
That's what
criticism.
I'm saying. Don't star us. Instead, send us a constructive feedback.
Yes, a trialbypodcast@gmail.com. Okay, that's it for today. Court is adjourned.
Bye.
Bye. You hungry?
Dude,